Hi, this is the story of Gerald Francis Lundemo versus the United States of America. During the Vietnam War, I was in high school and going to college, and at that time they had a draft that meant young people were forced into the army to go fight in Vietnam. I was opposed to the war because I knew that it wasn't about fighting communism. It was really about opening up markets for U.S. corporations. And so every time the draft board sent me a notice, I would write something on the back objecting. And my whole point about this was that I believed that my allegiance should be to the whole earth and all their people, not just one country. And so that I didn't believe that a draft board had the best ideas about how I should serve the earth. So I decided that I should do it myself. Well, eventually my draft board sent me a notice to appear for an induction physical, and shortly thereafter I was given 2 felony citations, one for not giving an address change and one for not showing up for the induction physical. Well, the FBI wanted to make a case example of me and one other activist because we were well-known anti-war activists. And so they assigned 2 FBI agents to my case. And they were trying to find me. I was living in Missouri. They harassed my parents. My mother was a public school nurse at the high school, and they put her up against the lockers and yelled at her and told her she was going to go to prison if she didn't cooperate. My dad was a commander of the American Legion, and at first he was opposed to any kind of objection to the government, but after seeing how the FBI handled themselves, he came around to my point of view. Well, eventually the harassment to my friends and family was so great that I decided to turn myself into the Twin City Draft Counseling Service. And I had a very good lawyer who took me right through the federal court system and got fingerprinted and pictured and all that, and no one treated me badly because he was with me. And I went to work doing a conscientious objector type job at a school for autistic children that Muriel Humphrey ran, who was the wife of our state senator, Hubert Humphrey. Well, the day for sentencing came up, and I appeared in front of Judge Miles Lord. And that night before the sentencing, Nixon decided to mine the harbors in North Vietnam, which was a big escalation of the war. Hubert Humphrey came out against it. It turned out that Hubert Humphrey and Judge Miles Lord are close friends. But Judge Miles Lord had always issued at least a year and a day sentence to draft resistors, and that meant I was going to have to spend at least 3 months in Stillwater Federal Prison. But that morning, he decided to change his sentencing. But before he gave his sentencing, he asked me, "Is somebody in your family involved in drugs?" And I freaked out. I thought, what is he talking about? I turned around to my parents and said, what's this about? And then it hit me. Uncle Louie. He was a pharmacist in the small town of Watkins, Minnesota, where my parents grew up. So I said, "Louie?" And he said, "Yeah, how's Louie?" Apparently they worked together in the Democratic Party, and I didn't even know that. But anyway, so all that was fine and dandy. Then he sentenced me to 1 year probation, which means I didn't have to go to prison. The guy who was my probation officer was really mad about it. He thought I should be in prison. He made my life miserable. I had to check in with him like every week, and he treated me like a criminal. But after a few months, he took a vacation, I think to Branson, Missouri, which is kind of a music and entertainment place. And he came back. I met him the next morning for my regular appointment when he got back, and he was all happy and cheery and in a sarcastic kind of mood. He said, "Well, if you can find a conscientious objection job and a place to live in Missouri without leaving Minnesota, I'll let you go." Well, he thought that was going to be hard. I had already worked it all out. I had already a job lined up in the bakery at Fulton State Mental Hospital, and I had a house lined up in the country, rented from a lady from St. Louis. So I came in a few days later and had it all organized, and he let me go. So I had a new probation officer in Kansas City, Missouri, who was just great. He helped me organize the paperwork to get into the clemency program, and before too long, President Gerald Ford gave me an unconditional pardon. So it's off my record, and that whole episode was finished.